Alexandra spun in front of the mirror, admiring her dress. It shimmered, casting colors in the light coming in through the window. She stopped and looked herself over, hands out her side. She looked closer and then smiled. She reached over to her light table and picked up her projector necklace. She slipped it around her neck and activated it. Tiny blemishes upon her face and neck vanished, all traces of age hidden under a projected layer. She smiled at herself and nodded, turning to exit her bedroom. She skipped down the hall, the morning light touching the far edges of the living room. A loud bang echoed through the house, followed by several other loud thuds on the roof. Damn fucking spiders! They're going to wreck my roof! She stopped next to the bedroom door and knocked. Mr. Puss, get up! Your people are here! Nothing moved inside. She creaked the door open and looked around. Thin beams of light fluttered through the gap in the curtain, allowing her to see the still-made bed. She looked around the floor and chair. Nothing. She sighed and looked up. In the far corner near the closet, a small ball was curled up in a makeshift hammock. Puzdot! She shouted. The ball started moving. She looked back down the hall and yelled louder. Bubba! Your pets are outside and your buddy here needs to wake up! Bubba threw the door open and glared at her, sleep thick in his eyes. I don't smell coffee. You should get the brew started then. She smiled and turned toward the kitchen. Get dressed. I'll make some, you ass. She grumbled the last part. Bubba slowly turned and went back into his room. Puzdot had started waking due to all the shouting. He crept onto the ceiling and started rolling up his hammock. Through the roof and walls, he felt the familiar strumming of his son. He tapped back. I'm here. We're still waking up. He paused and then asked, Are the females with you? Yes. Bubba burst out into the hall a moment later, tapping the wall with his knuckles. Wake up, bud. Daylight is burning. He stepped into the kitchen and walked over to Alexandra, grabbing her from behind. She slapped his hands but turned her cheek toward him. He kissed her and slapped her ass. Thank you, love. She turned and caught him pulling 2 mugs down. Your friend need a mug? I'll grab him a beer. Last cup of coffee choked him up. He sat the mugs down on the table and got situated on a stool, pulling on his boots. Puzdot crawled around the corner, hugging the wall. Bubba looked up and pointed at him. Grab you a beer out the fridge and get one for the boy. Puzdot hissed in his tongue, words of fluid air mixing in his mandibles. Oh, shit. Bubba turned toward the living room. Speecho, you got a full charge? Charged and ready, sir. The orb replied. Get to work, then. The orb lifted out of its cradle near the window and floated into the kitchen. Puss, get you and your kin a beer. I'll pack up some sandwiches for the ride. Puss widened his eyes. Understood. Bubba finished tying his boots and stood up, watching Alexandra pour the coffee. You know if the girls are coming? Puzdot paused in the refrigerator and mumbled. The orb translated. They are outside. Alexandra perked up, smiling toward Puzdot. Girls? You brought your daughters? Bubba shook his head slightly. Daughters-in-law. Be careful around them. They're violent. Alexandra thought for a moment, and then took a sip of coffee. Okay then. What are you going to take in today? Bubba thought for a moment. I'll take the Star Breacher. You okay with the Crucible? She smiled and walked over to the safe. You know I love that thing. Take an extra battery and 3 eutectics each. She loaded up the ammo bag and then holstered the weapon on her hip, hanging loose against the dress. Hey, Puss, will this hurt the dress? Rubbing like this? She looked over at him as he was popping open the beers. He looked up and darkened his eyes. Can handle lots of wearing, it will be fine. She smiled. Good. Let's go out and meet the girls. Gorpul and Quietbite pivoted and took a step back as the door of the human house opened. A human, taller than the witch, different, stepped out. It had strands hanging past its shoulder, unwoven, and it had a weave, bright, royal, a weave of a mother draped over its flesh. Quietbite hissed and stood taller at the sight of Alexandra. You dare! You are of no blood! She arched her legs and started moving toward the human when Bubba stepped out beside his wife. He raised the thin device out toward the wire and moved his finger. The swamp was filled with fire and sound. Quiet Bite fell down, holding her head. Gorpul cowered next to Sliplegs and stood slowly. "What, sister? Did you kill her?" Bubba walked over and pointed the weapon on Quiet Bite. "No one fights on this trip, do you understand?" Quiet Bite looked up at him, eyes darkened. The noise, what have you done?" She pivoted her eyes toward Sliplegs. "How did she learn those weaves?" Bubba shook his head, powering up the gun. "I really didn't want to put a hole in my porch, Missy. You get one more chance. You going to be good?" Sliplegs scooted quickly over to her, putting 3 hands up and the 4th on her back. "She is good. She is just emotional, excited time. The dress is confusing to her." Bubba sighed. "You said no one would mess with her." Poozdot walked over, stopping near his son. "No thing will mess with her. To be a queen requires respect. Amongst ours, she will have to earn that respect or be careful in that weave." Alexandra walked over, holding her own gun out. "My house, my boat, my husband. Don't fuck with us, you got it, girlie?" Quiet Bite looked up at her and was about to speak harshly before Sliplegs grabbed her mouth. She instinctively bit him, but he held himself from making noise. He looked up at Alexandra. "Excited time, hard to control. I apologize to you, wife of Bubba Yaga. Please spare my wife." Alexandra tilted her head. "What do you mean, excited time?" Bubba looked around and motioned toward Poozdot. Poozdot crept past and the two started prepping the boat. Sliplegs looked at his wife and she started easing her bite on his finger. He looked up at the human female. "We are newly wed. She is fed and her body is making ready for a clutch. I'm sorry she is so aggressive." She looked over at the translator orb. "Idiot robot. She's in heat. Remember those words." She holstered the crucible and held a hand out toward Quiet Bite. The female nudged Sliplegs off and reached out, taking her hand. "They made it for you, didn't they?" Alexandra nodded. "They did. Do you know what the weaves mean?" Alexandra shook her head. "No idea, but I think it's beautiful." She turned toward Sliplegs. "The Fanga, this is how you got it?" Sliplegs widened his eyes, cowering slightly. "Fool male. You wish to win over your wives by deeming a swamp monster a queen? Idiots." She looked at Alexandra with all 4 eyes as she rose to her full height. "Males are stupid. I did not know human female, how you look. I feel we have many misunderstandings." Alexandra kept her eyes on the woman and nodded. "We have a long ride into town. We can talk through a few of them, I hope." Quiet Bite mirrored her nod. "I hope we can. I will contain my judgments as best I can." Alexandra smiled. "I will try to do the same." The waterway leading to Burmum was overgrown with plant growth. Bubba pointed out some flowers growing in the mossy foliage. Poozdot noted the Fenga and widened his eyes, pivoting back out. Sliplegs pointed out a group of tall legs walking through the deep waters in the distance. Gorpul and Quiet Bite sat opposite Alexandra at the front of the boat. Bubba hit a ripple and bounced them. Alexandra glared at him. "Easy! That hurts!" Bubba looked at Poozdot out of the corner of his eyes and slowed the boat down. He cracked a slight smile. Gorpul leaned over. "Are you banished here same as the Bubba?" Alexandra took a long breath, sighing. "Yes and no. I'm banished here, but not for the same reason." She pointed over at him with her thumb. "He's got a gambling addiction, and this here is a kind of debtor's prison. No real money here, no real way, or so I figured, to gamble." She looked over at the chests near Bubba's seat. "We're taking something back with us, to help the town." She smiled. "Helping cure him, too." Gorpul got startled from another small bump and clung tighter to the rail. Should he be using this magic being unable to see? Alexandra looked over at him. "You can't see?" she shouted, pointing at her eyes. He shrugged and slowed down the motor. "What?" She looked over at Gorpul. "You said he can't see?" Gorpul spoke up, the translator increasing volume in the boat speakers. "He said he used a special tool. He couldn't see well and had to use a different fire thunder. Is that why yours are different? Shouldn't you be steering the craft?" Bubba laughed. "I scared them." "So you told them you're blind?" Alexandra asked. He nodded. "Predators, lameness, it's a trigger to them. They lose fear of it, and they were scared of me." She turned back to the young spider folk. "He was bullshitting you." I do not know that word. What is a bull? How is that making him blind? He got its feces in his eyes? Alexandra shook her head. Males lie. Gorpul widened her eyes. That they do. She leaned forward, all four eyes on Alexandra. Women lie too. Do you agree, Queen? Alexandra leaned back, her hand finding her holster. Yes, they have been known to. Quiet Bite spoke up. Why did you get banished here? Alexandra thought for a moment, looking over the light cascading through the murky water. Well, I'll say it bluntly. I was a whore. I'm not ashamed of it. Quiet Bite leaned over and whispered with Gorpul. She turned back, focusing on the human woman. You mated for wealth? We don't understand. How does that work? Human males, they are driven. She touched her temple. Do you have any bugs or animals that do stupid things? Quiet Bite whispered again with Gorpul. She turned an eye back toward Alexandra. Stuga. They crawl up tree bark and you can make a loud noise. They will fall. Alexandra thought for a moment. Why do they crawl up the bark? Quiet Bite touched her fingers together. They crawl up to shoot out eggs, make next generation. They have to crawl up. She laughed and clapped her four hands together. Loud clap, they fall, every time. Then they climb up again. Alexandra smiled. Yeah, men are like that. They crawl toward women. They can't help it either. We can do mean things to them and still they crawl back. Some, desperate enough, will give you fortunes to mate. Gorpul looked over at Bubba. What fortune did he give to mate with you? She laughed. I'm stuck with that idiot. We got paired up in our penance. She sighed again. We're both from a backward world. Things are different there. How? Quiet Bite asked. What do you mean world? Alexandra groaned. I don't know how to explain that. You're going to need someone better than me. She shifted on the bench. I can tell you how, though. Most places humans live, they live with things like that damn translator. They're everywhere. Lazy people, they don't do shit. My world, we worked for a living. Made money the old way. Lived how our ancestors lived. She smiled. Me especially. Men came from all over to meet me. She turned and looked at the girls, their eyes transfixed on her. That was the problem, though. They all had wives. Gorpul sat up straighter, her hand clasping one of Quiet Bite's. You stole mates! Alexandra nodded. I did, and now I'm here. Quiet Bite reached over, palm open. Tell us, how many did you steal? Alexandra took her hand cautiously. More than I can count. Quiet Bite looked at Gorpul with two eyes before asking, How big can humans count? Alexandra smiled. Big. Quiet Bite squeezed the human's hand. I will respect your dress. I am sorry for my anger. Alexandra laughed. That got me respect. That's a first. She shook her head slightly and looked back out at the water. Your kind is growing on me. You have my respect too. The steam towers were the first things they could see of Birmingham. Sliplegs stood up in the bow, holding tight, watching as they got closer. The second sign of human habitation was the smell. The scent of the foundry on the air, acidic, metallic, and smoky, wafted through the trees, followed by smells from the restaurants. Bubba slowed the boat as he left the last row of trees and neared the wall. A scanner eye recognized his face and opened up the port doors. He looked over at Puzdot, speaking loudly. Stay close to us. Don't wander. You wander, you die. Understand? The four sets of alien eyes widened, staring at him. Alexandra reached over and took the girls' hands, causing them to shift a pair of eyes onto her. You girls stick with me? She squeezed. We're having a girls' day. They squeezed back. Bubba made his way through the docks, noting the numerous mammalian eyes of his kind leering at him. He raised his hand up, waving at the dockmaster. The man gave him a nod and pointed at an empty slip before noting the four creatures in their boat. Bubba pulled in slowly. Slip legs, tie us off. Slip, practiced on the porch back in the swamp, got out and tied the rope around the post hook. Puzdot grabbed the one at the side, tying off that point while Bubba tied off the third. Bubba made his way through the boat and climbed onto the dock. He reached down and helped Alexandra up, her dress glistening in the afternoon sun. Puzdot and Sliplegs saw the gesture and climbed out to replicate it. The two larger females took their hands and climbed out. Bubba looked around. "Keep eyes watching." He climbed back into the boat and started undoing the bundles of Fenga armor, Shetal fletching, and a packet of ghost worms he had kept secret. He then handed up the doctor plate up to Alexandra. "As I promised." She looked it over. "All right. Let's lighten the load then." She turned and looked toward the main street. Bubba climbed out, groaning. "Talk to the mayor first, then?" She looked at the plate and then back at him. "Yeah," he groaned again. "All right. Lead on, wife." "Already am, husband." The six made their way down the slate street, Alexandra at the lead, followed by the females, then Sliplegs, Pussdot, and lastly Bubba. People stepped onto the shop porches to see them. People dining under umbrellas put down forks to gaze. Bubba smiled, waving at anyone who met his eyes. Mayor Thompson stepped out from his stone office building and immediately started sweating. He looked down the steps to see what all the people milling was about. He saw Bubba and groaned. "Oi, T.L. Gumfries, thought you said you were never coming back to this god-forsaken place." Alexandra stepped up to the stairs. "He's beholden to me, and I, sometimes like some civility." Thompson stepped down the stairs, smiling at Alexandra. "Well, Miss Alexandra, it's always a good day with you in town." Bubba stepped up beside her, staring at him. "Mrs." Mayor Thompson waved his hand. "Rules are different here. No need for you to abide by anything you don't want to." He turned, smiling again at her. "We're all in this place together." He looked past them at the four dark-furred creatures standing just behind. "I see you've tamed some of the local fauna," he laughed. "Pack animals, you are smarter than you let on, TL." Alexandra looked back at the girls. "Yes, we need to talk about some of the local fauna with you and other things. Do you have some time?" He looked up the stairs and waved his hand up. "Lizzie! Lizzie!" A short woman in a dress and metallic shoes stepped out. "Yes, Mayor?" "Make up some tea. We're going to be talking in the lounge." She looked them over, noting their pets. "I ain't cleaning up after those things. I've seen the messes they leave on the walls." She turned and went back inside. Mayor Thompson stepped closer. "Your pets be okay out here?" Bubba stepped even closer. "You can have Lizzie hold off on the tea. I'm going to tell you right here." Alexandra glared at him. Bubba felt it in his periphery, but kept his eyes locked on Thompson. "Remember our last poker game?" "I remember well. Cheater is as cheater does." Bubba's face soured. "I ain't no cheat. I won fair and square." "You're good at it. I'll give you that, but I don't know about fair and square." Alexandra cleared her throat. "He won this off you. We wanted to return it for the town." She lifted the plate up, offering it. The mayor laughed. "Really?" He turned back toward Bubba. "You came back 'cause of your conscience? Felt bad for stealing our doctor?" Alexandra elbowed him. "Yes, it isn't right." Mayor Thompson smiled at Alexandra. "It is right. I can't prove you cheated, and as such, you won it. You're going to need it out there. No telling what you'll get up to," he said, looking at the four creatures behind them. Alexandra looked at Bubba, and then at the mayor. "You're going to let us keep it? You need it here, though." The mayor stepped even closer, whispering, "Truth be told, I claimed it broken, used for parts. Had a new one drop shipped in a week." He pushed it back into her hands. "Keep it. A gift." Bubba sighed, staring at him. "I won it. It ain't no gift." Mayor Thompson looked at him. Bubba continued. "And the translator I won." "I don't want it back either. No need for it. We all speak normal here." "No," Bubba said. "I've been using it. Out there." "Talking to the trees? Keeping up your conversation skills?" Bubba looked at Pussdot and motioned him forward with his head. Pussdot stepped forward. "Mayor Thompson, I want you to meet my friend Puss." Pussdot darkened his eyes, bowing. "Thank you for having us in your town." The orb translated from his growls. Mayor Thompson looked at the creature, then at Bubba, then at the other three in the back. You talk?" Pussdot looked up, an eye on Bubba. "Yes, we talk." "Wow, this is incredible, TL. They're almost sentient." Bubba shut his eyes for a moment. "They are sentient?" I've cooked in their ovens, ate with them. They use tools. The mayor took a step back, waving his finger. No, 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 no. This planet was scanned and categorized. There is no sentience on this planet. He pointed at Poozdat. They don't use fire. You're not scamming me again, whatever this is. Alexandra looked at the girls, nodding. Tell him about yourselves. Gorpul looked at her and then stepped up beside Poozdat, a head taller. I am Gorpul, daughter of Silent Cut, holder of the Southern Grove. We are a people, and we think. Mayor Thompson stared at her for a moment before looking at Bubba. Tillman, you're serious? This isn't some ruse? Do you really think I cheated you? Mayor Thompson thought for a moment and looked around the street, dozens of people still staring. This is a potential annexation violation. Holy shit, this is bad. He laughed for a moment. Good for us. Good for us. Bad for this world, bad for the Empire, though. This can cause big, big waves to start rolling. But hey, we might get out of here cause of this. Alexandra put her hand on his shoulder. The other homesteads? They're still out there killing them. Some might not like rules imposed. The mayor nodded. Yeah, rules, right? They'll have to be convinced. Maybe a tour, like an old-timey asteroid show. Got porch-to-porch entertaining folks. Let them see what they can do. Get them to cook or something. Yeah. He started moving his finger in the air as he was thinking. I think if people understand this, they'll buy in quick. We can get off this mudball. He looked at each of them. This is a good thing. He turned and started up the stairs. Go. I gotta make some phone calls. Tabs on me. I'll let Susan know. Alexandra turned and looked at Bubba. Well, I guess that's going well. Bubba smiled and took her empty hand. Could have been worse. Let's go get drinks before he puts a limit on the tab. He patted Poozdat and Sliplegs and pointed toward the local pub. Drinks on the mayor, boys. Alexandra looked at the girls and then around at the people staring. Keep mindful. Their eyes widened and pivoted, scanning the crowds.